We are live.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey guys, how are you?
Oh, all right. All right, all
Yeah,
right, all right.
stoked to dive back into all this again and answer some questions. We are going to cross our fingers. Last time we did this, we tried this on Friday. We ran into some crazy lag. People couldn't hear Nate. So we are going to try to get all that stuff solved.
Yeah, hopefully it's good. Maybe if maybe if we just wait a second, can somebody tell us if we're like completely busted or not?
Yeah, they'll let us know.
They'll let us
Absolutely.
know. They'll let us know. Awesome. Do you want to dive right in? I think we have quite a bit of questions, to be honest with you.
Yes,
Some were
sir.
pulled up. Yeah, some were pulled up just from the playset itself. Some were pulled up kind of just through conversation. And, everybody's asking a lot of the same questions. So we've kind of just compiled a few that have come up. We can kind of kick that off right now if you'd like, Rob.
All right, lovely. Take two, says Henry in chat, and it looks like
Take
all
two,
good.
exactly.
Yep. Igor says good to go. Anyone is wondering too, Igor Tontsev there, he is one of our lead 3D character designers on the team here. So welcome, guys.
Yeah, Igor rules. Awesome. Okay, well, I'm just gonna jump right in then. JB asks, "Will there be more weapons in the future?" Rob, you want to talk about kind of how we see weapons high level?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So look, I we have a lot of choices here, right, and what to do. And one of the things that we're really that I'm pushing for is to create some scarcity to weapons. I almost want to like harken back to like old school, like even Nintendo games. Like I think of the Legend of Zelda, the first one on original Nintendo. Like there was only three swords, and it was such a massive upgrade when you got a new one. And so I don't want to just limit it to three, but I want it in that world. That's really what it is. So that when you do get that upgrade, it's very satisfying. It's really cool. It opens up new opportunities for you. But that said, we do want to look at ways on how to modify and enhance and customize weapons. We're also looking into a very straightforward, almost crafting system, but that would be around potentially creating toxins that you can dip bladed weapons into or arrowheads into that could cause different things for to happen on with enemies. So yes, minimal weapons, but overall there'd be a melee weapon, and then there'll be a ranged weapon at minimum. And then I believe right now we are testing two types of melee weapons, so like a faster weapon and a slower weapon. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and just to jump on that for a second, I think the idea generally, without going into too much detail, is that we want much more customization around these things. So whether it's like different, yeah, again, like poison arrows, for example, versus regular arrows, I think having a weapon that you can really invest into kind of personalizing, making your own in terms of how it impacts gameplay, how you use it, what types of things you can upgrade it with. I think that'll be a lot more of a focus than just having like a wide variety of very like shallow, detailed weapons, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
cool. Okay. Big Kahuna asks, what are the biggest technical challenges you face with a game like Tail's Edge?
Well, why don't you start answering that one?
Awesome name, Big Kahuna. Good burgers. Anyways, yeah, I think the biggest challenge. I mean, well, it depends on what part of the game we're talking about. In general, like making games, especially things that are double A or higher in terms of budget and like product scope. There's a lot of moving parts to it, especially when you get into like 3D versus 2D and more. I guess like not open worlds, but more open worlds versus very restrictive ones. It opens up like a multiple of risk and challenges and things that can break. And if they can break, they will always break. But so far, I think our biggest challenge is actually one of the things that we're having the most fun with, which is like trying to innovate on a gameplay formula that we think needs to be innovated on with not only developing and prototyping rapidly, but also making new technology that unlocks different types of gameplay around things like parkour, around things like how quests work, things like how the environment spawns procedurally generated worlds, or how that kind of works with our level design principles. So building technology along these goals has been a challenge, but actually, at least to me, Rob, it's been the most exciting just because there's
Sure.
so much potential, you know?
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, the challenges are a lot broader. It's like um, a lot of things you take for granted. You know, you think you're going to make a game, third person action adventure game, RPG, whatever. It's like it'll that's it. That's it. You just have a third person. You run around, you kill stuff, you get stuff, and that's it. Like it's so much more to that. Creating the core loop is so much more detailed. It's been weird. It's almost like you're reinventing a wheel that's been reinvented a million times by a million studios. So, but the stuff that I'm really like, I wouldn't say keeps me up at night, because this whole thing is just it's more excitement than it is like worry. But it's kind of like, how can we? There's only so many ways to plop a camera behind a 3D character, and and that's it. And do you go in tight? Do you go in far? Do you make it variable? Like, what do you do? How do you make this feel different? How do you make this feel fresh? And I think in the beginning, I was trying to go like crazy overboard, trying to make the freshest and most unique thing ever. And then I realized that this is a game that's won in, it's 1,000 paper cuts on this one. Like there's just 1,000 little decisions that get made in collection that will make something really special. And you need a team that really cares about each little piece of what they're doing. And I think collectively, when you got the great soundtrack, the cool gameplay, the great details, the awesome animation details, the attention to reality and immersion, all of those things will hopefully bubble up into something that you play it, and it's a delight to play. Tricky, definitely tricky to accomplish.
Awesome. All right, here's one that we've heard a lot, just kind of generalizing it. So a bunch of people ask this specifically, but I'll just
Sure.
say, when do you plan on putting in settings, specifically sensitivity and key binding settings?
When are we going to
Yeah,
put in that?
when?
Oh, well, that's a great question. Yeah, I would say if a lot of people are asking us, then probably pretty soon. Absolutely. I mean, it's a lot like the difficulty settings and things like that. I just saw Doom Dark Ages just launched a like kind of a developer deeper dive into that, and they talked about how you can customize the difficulty, and it made me think, how much customization do people want? And the answer is a decent amount, as long as it's not too cumbersome. And so I think that it would be excellent for us to start exploring that. Again, I can't make promises for our developers though. So Kyle's probably listening to this right now being like, don't make a promise, don't make a promise. But that said, we should try to roll out a few things soon to test at least what feels right.
hmm and also, just to add to that as well, I think it's important to kind of think about how, why we're testing and what's kind of coming up with our tests in the future, because a lot of what we've been doing in the background is building out the foundation to be able to test this stuff more rapidly, as we kind of extend into this year. So the next test we do, and the couple tests after this one, there's going to be a lot more changes that are happening much quicker. It's because we built up this foundation. So a lot of things like sensitivity, how enemies are responding to combat, even movement getting cleaned up much more features getting added and broken and tested quicker. You'll start to see kind of a ramp up in terms of what's getting added to these tests and how fast things kind of feel different and improve. So with things like, settings, we will add them in probably for the next test. Specifically for sensitivity. That's a big one. So,
Cool.
yeah, awesome. Next question is it intentional that zooming with the bow cancels time dilation? What is time dilation intended for?
Yeah, I mean, look, time dilation, it's still so early. We're still just testing these different
Yeah.
pieces here. For me, it's tricky to aim things in a game, like especially something like a bow, snapping you out of a normal combat, especially if you're in melee and you go switch to bow. So we wanted to add more time dilation so that you don't have to like have these massive telegraphed attacks all the time, like very predictable behaviors from everything. We do want to make things a little more immersive, and then let the player decide when to slow down time and how to manipulate it. But when you test some of those things, then you do have other consequences, like certain things snapping you out of that or breaking that. And again, this is stuff that our designer and developers are working on right now to figure out. I don't have a straight answer otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of really awesome ideas that are floating around. Time dilation was one of the big ones, Rob, that I remember you brought on really early on as something that was important to the vision. And I think that there's a lot more like this that we're kind of just throwing in to see how they feel. A lot of this is almost like we're running around in the dark looking for the answer. So sometimes just getting it out and testing it, and maybe it doesn't make much sense right now. There is a vision for it in the future, but we have to kind of see how it feels just playing around with it before we can decide exactly what and how it's going to be used in what context. So all part of the testing process and how you kind of experiment with these new features. Cool.
Absolutely.
Will there be an aim assist for the bow?
Probably there'll probably be something. Maybe that would be a change. Again, these are the more detailed nuances that we're going to have to figure out as we finesse the gameplay. I think I'll answer this with a broader answer, which was that early on, very early, when we started mapping out the overall game pillars and the objectives that we want to take and who's the game for, one of the potential audiences are like, the reflex junkies, so to speak, right? Think of like the Elden Ring masters, the Dark Souls, masters that just understand how to get the timing windows and the right button presses and super fast reactions. And I think that is a important subset of players, but then there's others that just want to really play a great story and have a lot of fun and maybe have something more forgiving. So what I would love to see is something where the more assists you take, this was actually part of the original vision with time dilation too, that if you overuse time dilation, then you cannot get certain quality of either rewards from that encounter, or perhaps if you overuse something like an assist and an aim assist, then you could still complete it and have a great playthrough the whole game. But to the people that really take the time to master the mechanics, it'd be so awesome to reward them for that and only them for that, and without any real way to cheat the system to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Elden Ring's awesome, but Souls-like that requires like a major skill input where you have teenagers with like perfect reflex time. That's great, and I think that type of game is awesome for a very specific kind of person. We definitely want a little bit of that, but obviously we don't want to, shy away from the fact that the reality is most people don't want to tweak out over like a boss fight 500 times before they win. So I think our biggest thing here would be, I could see aim assist being something that's optional, and it doesn't necessarily impact much of the experience, especially if somebody just wants the adventure, the storyline, a little bit of the combat feel without having to really spend hours and hours like perfecting. Also, last thing, it doesn't help that our AI, as you can see probably in the demo below, like they're pretty fast, they're pretty speedy, they're pretty spastic, they kind of run around a lot. That's going to stop too, so maybe headshots will be easier to get anyways.
Yeah, or you have to get more time dilation to get in there, right?
Yeah, more time dilation. That's the answer for everything. More time dilation.
I'll tell you my one thing I've made crystal clear is that if an arrow goes into a human's face, it doesn't matter if they're the final boss or not. They are dead. That's the way that this game is going to play. So we'll make it hard to do that especially for key things. But that opens up a whole other can of worms. Like, do we fight NPCs and towns and that kind of stuff? And we're still figuring those answers out too. So more to come.
All for y'all to test, I guess. That's the goal. Okay, let me ask the next one then. So can you explain how you handle AI behavior in your games, and what kind of behaviors do you aim to include?
This one I personally cannot because I know, I'll give the broader answer, right? The broader answer to AI is that some people are familiar with the Nemesis system, right? That's a big thing. It's actually trademarked. You can't do it. That's where it's like, from the Lord of the Rings game where if you kill an enemy in a certain way, then they come back and they're stronger. There's ways to work around that it's patented, actually, that whole that system. Yeah. But ultimately, you can't patent just ingenuity. And what we really want to do is we want the game to feel immersive. Like, it's really important to me. Like, I don't want the, all right. In a lot of games, you look at like World of Warcraft, anything like that, right? You aggro an enemy, and what does it do? It just starts running at you blindly. It just comes at you and it just starts swinging, and you just attack it. And it's like, that's as simple as it gets. I would like something that feels a little more real. It feels a little more immersive. It would be really nice if you shoot an arrow at something and it just barely grazes the person's, and they avoid it, to have them pause for a second and realize that, wow, that came a little close. Like, I might need to be like more careful. Now, those nuances and how they translate to actual gameplay is going to be really tricky, but that's where, Nate, if you want to elaborate a little more, some of your visions for AI in this game, that's a big one. But I want parts of this game to feel actually dangerous and that there are stakes to them. That's key.
Well, let me just shout out the dev team a bit. On the programming side, we have some amazing developers who are kind of conceptualizing and starting to realize a lot of these, specifically for AI behaviors, a lot of this stuff. So Sandra and Mike, they've been awesome so far in kind of setting up the groundwork for a really complex system in the future. I think without getting into too many specifics, the one thing that we really want to talk about, and you'll start to see in the new tests coming forward, will be around adaptive AI, whether it's quests, whether it's just general behaviors, like around, NPCs engaging with the city, engaging with each other just in the background, or with combat specifically, where it'll actually learn from you, it'll adapt to your play style, it'll provide kind of a unique challenge. Ultimately, our goal is to invest in game design and technology for AI that allows us to create a new experience almost every time you play the game. It should never feel like you're exploiting a system. You found the meta. The meta should always kind of be changing to some degree to allow a unique experience. So just one quick example would be something like, if you're the kind of player who's more stealth oriented, who likes to climb trees and shoot enemies from a distance and surprise them, well, the next time that you engage an enemy type like that, maybe it's in the next game or the next combat encounter, gameplay session, mind you, not game, but gameplay session or combat encounter, the enemies will actually change their behavior. So they may not run in and patrol on the ground below you. They may actually try to hide in the trees first and send a scouting party. And so the idea is that it's always trying to counter you and provide some sort of new challenge that is fun, not too challenging, not too crazy, but a new challenge that makes you feel like you have to kind of think much more of like a living system. So that's kind of our general goal. How we get there, again, wait for the play tests. You'll start to experience that very soon. This is going to be something that's going to be an ongoing investment, but we're going to try to break it often and test it all the time.
Yeah, it's great.
Cool. How big is the world going to be in terms of explorable areas? Is it open world or more contained with areas you unlock?
Sure. Definitely did not want to do open world, because I really wanted a great narrative story, and the more open a world is, the less control you have over making a tight narrative story. So my original vision for the game was 7 levels. There's no way. I was talked out of that very early. It went down to 5. Now it's down to 4. So 4 levels to this game, but I don't want you to think that that's small. We're actually trying to make the levels large and robust, quite full, and then break the levels into sections and segments that allow as much exploration and deviation as you want to take within that. We're really figuring out the right balances, but we do have the major cadence, and there is a logical flow that has to happen to progress through the story and move on. But the really cool thing, I think, as far as the scope of the game. Now, I think we've said a few times that we're aiming at around 8 to 12 hours of gameplay, give or take, at least straight through. And then I think people that want to really min-max things and go crazy can probably do more, and we can have all kinds of cool stuff afterwards. But the main objective is to kind of like pulling a string and unraveling, or you think of layers. We just want to keep like, whoa, this world's bigger than I thought it was. Whoa, hang on, this is bigger than I thought it was. And like, wait a minute, there's this whole thing over here. Wait, there's a whole other race over here. And we're going to get to see how this race, like how they live and what their town looks like and how they function and how there's a society. And then wait a minute, then we're going to get to a big city that has all of them like in one, and so each level should be something that is just completely unique and expanded upon what you just saw, so that the world gets bigger and bigger. I'm very, very excited for that. So it's not just more of the same or iteration throughout. You really are just getting deeper and deeper into the wildness that is Mario's mind, who is our narrative writer on this, because he's just going ham on this one, and I love it. I love what we're uncovering here.
Yeah, and really quick as well, like one of the biggest things that I'm really proud of actually, and I think that we have something pretty special is the approach that level design and game design has taken on kind of how you make a world or a level, sorry, feel open, but not make it open. So Stefan and Yvonne have spent a lot of time trying to consider, how to make and enrich a small enough level, how to pack it full of content, how to pack it full of different opportunities that are unique, while also making it kind of a little bit more curated. So instead of just wandering into any area at any time, there's a little bit of a pacing to it. There's a little bit of a structure to it that allows the player to just really enjoy the storyline a little bit too. So it's that fine balance between like it's fully linear versus it's fully open that is really exciting to me. And I think as we again test more, you'll start to see it a bit as well in some of our testing. Okay, the next question is, what's the level of detail in the character models, and how do you manage polygon counts per performance? Interesting.
I couldn't answer that one.
The level of detail, I mean, it's whatever works to make it look good. Obviously, it's not going to be PlayStation 1 level, 8 polys or whatever. But yeah, I can just answer this real quick, Rob. I mean, look, like we're obviously running on next gen, or I guess current gen at this point, hardware. Unreal 5 is what we're after. So there will be a level of detail, but I will say in terms of, I'm not going to give like a poly count specifically, but in terms of what we're focusing on, photorealism, and when I say like hyper realistic character models that have all these crazy features, that's something that we don't really have in our budget, but also we don't feel that it impacts the gameplay and the experience a lot. So we're not investing heavily into like the most high fidelity characters you've ever seen. On top of that, we're going to kind of tailor our art direction and our style to work within that boundary and actually use it as a positive versus a constraint. So, high quality and really thought out and really thoughtful, but not necessarily like movie level, VFX level.
It's not. Yeah, it's just not. It's not for us, I think. Look, you look at, if you guys have seen, is it Blackgate? I think that's the name. Blackgate is the one that's come out. So those Turkish developers that made it. Looks awesome. Like quality is crazy high, but you just get such diminishing returns from that. And so we're getting a lot of inspiration from like Renaissance and classic painters like Rembrandt and things like that, because good paintings are the omission of detail that makes them so special. And that is something we talk about a lot when we go through the visuals of this. So you look at something like the gameplay footage for the new Captain America game, the one with Black Panther, that's in the 40s or 30s that takes place. It's it's technically cool and it's interesting, it's beautiful, but again, like, does that mean more immersion? Does it not? And then the other side of that is something like No Rest for the Wicked that's out. That's just a hyper stylized game in a very unique way from the guys that made Ori in the Forest. So, we are figuring out our own visual and shape language. But to me, the fidelity of that going hyper realistic has extreme repercussions. It actually will damage, I think, the overall piece. I want to pause here. We got a couple, got some questions here from Cadence in the chat here. You guys mentioned that the story is being developed right now alongside gameplay. There's a game I really like where they started making the concept art alongside the story. So my question is, will you guys be sharing that initial concept art, or do you reckon that counts as oversharing? Well, I tend to overshare anyway. So yeah, I mean, look, we started this thing. This started with okay. Everyone is different in how they begin to map out a story. And for me, I I started to just think about key characters and key moments that I thought would be incredible. So I'm happy to overshare. This is one that sadly will not make the game, but would have been badass. Which is I originally wanted to put the Beast into the game, like from Beauty and the Beast, and have the Beast. You find him, you stumble across him, chained up and captured by a villain in the game, and then I wanted to make it so that you get captured as well by that same villain, and then you have to talk to the Beast throughout, while you're both basically in chains or in the cell. And then eventually that villain pits the two of you against each other, and the survivor gets to leave, and then the loser dies. And so, pretty epic, right, across the board. So we start by creating prototype and concept art around some of that stuff, just to get the loose idea of what that could look like in B. Now, ultimately, we do it hand in hand. So we get an idea, but we don't have infinite resources, so we can't just start designing anything that comes into our mind. So what we had done is we did pare back the overall scope across the levels. What are the key moments? Who are the key players? And then we start to develop more and more detailed information. That it might not be the exact answer you're looking for, but that's my approach on concept art to the story. But we do leave room to shape the story more and more as we go, but we're not changing it over and over. It's almost like what Breaking Bad. They knew the last episode, or Lost. Like, they knew the first episode, they knew the first season, they knew the last episode. Then you just keep working in between based off the resources, time, and team that you have. Anyway, that's my answer on that, Nate. I don't know if there's more you want to add.
I mean, yeah, I can answer a few things on this specifically. We will share concept art quite soon. I think the biggest challenge that that stopped us from sharing everything that we have is obviously concept art is just a concept. So ideas are cheap to explore, and some of the ideas go wildly in different directions on purpose. You want to cast a wide net and have points to discuss. If we share all of it, I think our challenge is that it's going to say something about the game that we're not ready to say yet, because it may not even be something we want to do, right? But we don't want to share too much of that early on, because that process is very messy, and it's often not as glamorous as like an art book would make you believe it is. It's a lot of quick sketches, a lot of comparisons, a lot of debates. So when the concept art is kind of more finalized and we have something that's presentable, which we do have and we will share quite soon, then it's time to talk about it. But we also want to structure it so we can show it off with like some of the 3D art, that you can see the process of like, here's our concept art and here's how it's turned into a model. Here's how that plays in the game, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's cool. And I want to answer this one too from Nick Dallas, asking about arrow spread. So basically, you hit that bullseye, and when you release the arrow, but then it misses the target. Personally, I like a little bit of RNG in this, especially in archery, especially in this kind of archery, like a recurve bow. You will definitely, Robin Hood is a myth for a reason. But that said, we don't want it to be extremely punishing. So we have to figure that balance out. So it might be too punishing right now if you aim and miss, and we don't want it to feel bad there. You want just the right amount of, oh, hang on, I got to knock another arrow and take another shot. So that's the idea. But I'd rather keep pushing that before getting like perfect aim 90 to 100% of the time. Maybe the players that really master the game might be able to hit that, which would be really cool and impressive for them. But there is some realism to all this of trying to like figure out how to navigate that.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Nick Dallas. It would be, were you spamming arrow shoot, like the shoot button when you were playing? Because the way we've decided to structure this at the moment is that the longer you take to draw your bow, where right now you can't see the animation, but you should see like a reticle that starts to kind of decrease and then turn yellow. That would be like the perfect shot. And so the longer you wait, the more accurate and powerful the shot is. We wanted to do that for the exact reason where if you're just running around spamming and jumping around, yeah, that could be cool, but you shouldn't be a god when you do that. It's quick, right? So it's going to be inaccurate. We'll have to tweak it, of course, but we think that the best thing is if you decide to take that shot and wait and get the perfect shot, you should be rewarded for that,
Cool.
Cool. Let me jump into one of these, Rob, the ones that we have in our questionnaire. How do you keep track of all the interconnected systems, combat, progression, story, to avoid bugs or imbalance? Somebody, a game dev, asking this.
Yeah. Look, at the start, you got to develop them all a little bit in isolation. You want the teams talking to each other regularly, but um, you know, story, no matter how good it is, won't make a game better. Like story, the loop is everything. Gameplay, the feel for gameplay is everything. That said, if the loop is good, story can 4x the potency of the game. Like so, but if it's bad from the start, then it doesn't matter how good it is, right? So it's very exponential that way. Getting all these systems to work together, yeah, well, it's a lot like what we're doing here. You get a team together of people that just does everything they can, and we keep meeting every single week. We have sprints every 2 weeks with lots of milestones, lots of moving parts. Our PM is amazing, balancing all of that. We're on Slack every day, all of us sharing stuff and talking through. But right now, everyone has their individual marching orders. They go, they work on them, they refine, they bring it back, and we just keep that loop, rinse and repeat until we say this feels good, it's validated, let's go.
Beautiful. I'm just going to move right on to the next question here. How do you prioritize features and content during development?
It's whatever Nate says that we can do, pretty much. Yeah. So I keep asking for certain things. He's like, no, we don't need that yet. And it turns out he's right like 95% of the time. So that's good. Yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing too is limited time, limited budget, and there's a lot of things that we have to test first, and we want to ultimately our core goal is one thing. The faster we can get out something and test it with you guys, we can explore why it doesn't work or why it works, the better. The faster and more often we do this, the more information we gain to make a better game and a better system. That's what we prioritize. So whatever features allow us to validate quickly and push forward and pretty much try to break as fast as possible. That's the best way we can work at this moment. It'll be fast. You'll see a lot of improvements, a lot of changes, like quickly, and that's how we prioritize at the moment. Once we get into larger production and more refinement, then obviously that strategy will change. But that's for another day. Are you using any custom built tools for your game? Example, level editors, asset pipelines, PCG. How do they improve your workflow?
I mean, sure. Like a lot of what we do is custom. We started in the very early days by tacking on, we tried a lot of different plugins and things like that, but that just adds a ton of bloat to the game, a lot of risk, a lot of issues. When we got our, when we upped the quality of our team, that kind of put a stop to a lot of that. But that said, yeah, like it's a little early to answer that in detail, but overall, sure. We are looking into PCG systems and things like that. But the goal again is to, if you have a PCG system, you don't want it to feel like PCG, at least not in the negative way. You got to find a way to make these pieces work. That's the only way to do it.
Bingo. Perfect answer. Couldn't agree more. I got two more, Rob, and sure. That's pretty much it for us, unless there's more questions from the chat. But do you use a physics-based combat system, ragdoll physics, hitboxes, etc., or is it more traditional, animation-based?
I know Nate wants ragdoll. He wants these guys flying, especially our little gnomes. We haven't showed them yet, guys. I cannot wait to share the gnomes in this game. But yeah, I mean, look, I think animation tends to be a bit of a crutch overall in a lot of games. I think animation departments can become huge. We are trying to find ways to be lean and mean in that regard, and figure it out that way. I mean, but that said, again, I'm going to go back to some of the original visions of this. I wanted a game where you can slice a leg off of like a giant boar, and then it would be hobbling on 3 legs. And then if you got another one, then it obviously couldn't run, and then you would be able to take it out. That's crazy, and it requires an insane amount of programming as well as animations and all stuff. But I also want a world where if you shoot an arrow into an enemy and they're not able to pull it out or break it, then it should stay there. And if you slice an enemy, that cut should stay there and it should endure. And I think that that's really cool too. We want as much immersion as we can. So if we could do physics based, great. But over reliance on animation just sounds like it's going to make everything clunked up and get it muddy and just maybe be too messy.
Yeah, I just can't wait for the clips of people like ragdolling dudes off of cliffs, finding
Yeah.
funny ways to exploit it. I mean, I really look forward to that kind of stuff. I love seeing a lot of our bugs, or just quirky ways to play with the game that we haven't even thought of yet. So
I will
to
say,
me, yeah, Ragdoll's going to unlock all that. But go ahead.
yeah, or like we did, our game designer started mapping out an entire thing around velocity system, and just the layers and levels of complexity that would add seemed like not the best use of time right now. So this is very much a game, guys, of like, we've got to launch this game. Like, that's not a question. The game's got to release, no matter what. And then depending on how good we can make it, then that opens the door for a sequel to show that we can do the one, and then we've got more everything to do the next one with the pieces of what we want. So if that means a velocity system or something has to be pushed, onto a back burner for later, so be it. But if we do end up later feeling like we need something special here, it's not enough, we can come back and revisit it. So yeah, I want to put a kick into this game, just some kind of like, I mean, she's just a teenage girl, but it's like, if she gets someone off balance, she should be able to just kick them and push them, and especially a smaller enemy, just knock them over and like move on, or kick it to launch herself back. But we'll get there. Our animator John he did an animation of her jumping on some dude's face and then launching into a backflip off of it. We should find that and share that. It was just
Yeah,
so
we'll
badass.
find it.
Yeah,
That was awesome.
that was really cool.
Yeah, John has a lot of really great ideas. He's leading our animation, and just to shout him out for a second, I think that like the way we're approaching this is being very, very smart with the resources that we have, and saying like, look, either we do the same thing that people have done and accept that like this feature itself won't be innovative, we're going to innovate somewhere else, or we look at our resources and say, okay, we have to be creative, which means we have to innovate on something here. We can't just spend the same amount of money that other guys are spending because we need to finish the game and release other things. So what I like about John's approach so far with animation, especially around like combat and movement, is that he's been really creative with how to, expand what animation can give us, while also trying new technologies and new pipelines that make it actually accessible for a smaller studio like us to do. So big shout out to John. He's been a lifesaver. We probably won't have, we wouldn't have the animations that we currently have that you'll see in the next couple tests and going forward without that guidance. So
Yeah, absolutely.
beautiful.
It's gonna be great. And we are, and Petar, our tech lead, is also the stuff he's doing too. We're looking into facial recognition. We're looking into Move.ai, so using just cameras, no mocap suit for a lot of this stuff, and really but building out our own kits, our own system, our own workflow that's just lean and mean. I genuinely believe if we pull this insane vision off, it's going to, I don't know, I believe what we will have accomplished with such a small team is going to be extremely impressive, I think. So, but that's a lot of hot air right now. And and so we'll leave it at that. But at least that's the vision of what we're trying to do here. And I think already what we've done with the team is shaping up great. But then again, we got a lot of work to do. So
Get me fired up, Rob. I'm getting fired up listening to
man,
this.
I can't wait. Yeah, can't wait to see. We'll be the video. We got a video launching today in another hour or so that will showcase a lot of footage, including the outpost, which is much more visually interesting than this kind of gym box style piece here. So you guys will be able to get a much greater sense of how the game could look and feel, even at its early stages now. So but that said, Nate, what do you say? Want to wrap this up?
Well, if you have time for one more, I got one last one.
All right, let's do one more.
Perfect. So how do you handle enemy aggro and combat range? Is it based on proximity, line of sight, or a complex system of threat levels?
It's going to be, it's a mix. It is a mix of sight. It's a mix of sound as well is another one. The sound that Red makes will be picked up by enemies and then can be muffled by pathways. we don't have things like tall grass and such yet, but that's going to happen. So there will be threat levels. So we are looking into systems like Horizon that have done a lot around that to see which pieces of that we like and don't like. What does the UI look like if an enemy is alerted versus fully aware of where you are? Can you break stealth? How does that work? So that's a big piece of what we're trying to do. We're also, because movement for Red is so important, she's like a gymnast. I was telling Mario, maybe a nickname for her should be the Red Squirrel, like something like that. Like, but the idea is about repositioning. So how do you break the line of sight enough and allow her to rapidly reposition in a way where they just don't know where she is? And that God almost reminds me of like Batman in a way of like, he was like, where is he? Right? Like, where is Red? That's, if we can pull that off with this, and that's great. But as far as alerting and AI, how the AI works, it's going to be a combination of all that stuff. We don't want something where you're 2 miles away. And I think that's in the gameplay now. We have some of this now. We're gonna change, but where she's really far away and and then enemy just realizes that they're being targeted. It's like, no, we don't want that. Like we still have to make it immersion.
Yeah, I mean, like our awareness system and how enemies kind of seek that will dictate a lot of this. I think also it kind of touches on what we discussed earlier with AI behavior. Obviously, different enemies will have different goals, right, and different types. For example, an archer in the future will be different than a swordsman or someone who carries like a more melee-oriented weapon versus someone with more armor versus less, right? So you'll have different enemies that look to get more information versus brawl, right? So an archer may climb something high to get more visibility, which would actually increase their range and obviously change how the system works with line of sight and whatnot, versus other enemies that may just be more defensive and kind of wait for you to come attack them. So I think a lot of this stuff will be explored anyways in the future, and hopefully all of it's fun. That's really the goal, is all this stuff, if it's fun and it's cool and it feels fresh and it feels different each time, then whatever gets us to that, like, that's really our goal. So,
and that's it. I mean, she is a hunter, and so, or she knows how to hunt, and so it would be really cool if certain beasts in the forest use heightened sense of smell and movement and things like that. And you actually have to use the environment and understand the mechanics in order to capture some rare game that may otherwise just run away. So we'll see. But there's a video we released last year on the enemies of the game and the beasts and the monsters in the forest for the first level. And I just love the creativity that's there too. So we'll see how all that plays out as we go. But we're starting with humans because humans are pretty tough to figure out. So we're going to start there with AI and go from there.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Thanks,
great.
everybody.
Yeah.
Anyone
stay and watch. It's wicked, and I appreciate it. And anyone else that is just coming in, please go back and give this a watch. But yeah, go for it, Nate.
Yeah, real quick, just want to shout out kind of what we have going on and recommend everybody who's watching this, if you haven't, we test this game every month, maybe even more frequently in the future. But the best way to do that right now is to go on our Discord and sign up for Dev Club, or go on our website. There should be a link in the description. If not, it'll be provided in the chat momentarily, probably. Go there, sign up. It's totally free. We just basically do it on Windows for now, but it'll be expanding soon. And yeah, the best way to communicate with us is on Discord, obviously. We're kind of always online looking to chat. Any features you guys have or any ideas, always love to hear it. Love the creativity. And yeah, Dev Club. That's what kind of made all this possible. So thanks everybody for testing, and I really appreciate the feedback we've gotten so far. It's been invaluable. So really appreciate it.
Yeah. Overall, I couldn't be happier with just the general discussions that's been happening and the feedback. And yeah, every month, every time we do that with Dev Club, we take all that feedback and we give it to our developer. And I asked him, I was like, does this annoy you? And he's like, no, I love it. Bring it on. Keep it coming, because that's the stuff that makes us better and better and better. So I'm going to paste our Discord link right here. You guys can go there, and that's how you can join the Dev Club as well. And we'll make sure it's in the description of this video. So killer. Thanks, guys. We've got, like I said, we got a new video releasing today on an update of a lot of what was accomplished last year. We also have a teaser trailer for the actual game that's in development, and so we'll keep you posted as to when that might release. And it's all happening. It's going to be a busy year.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Super excited.
Great. Take care. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Right. Stream is over.
Okay, we're good.